It was a quiet November night in Kansas City in 1988. Six brave firefighters rushed into what seemed like a routine call where small fires were reported at a construction site near Highway 71. For these heroes, it was just another night protecting their city. But within moments, everything would change. A deafening explosion rocked the area, shaking buildings miles away. The scene that followed was nothing short of massive craters, debris scattered across the site, and silence replacing the chaos. 6 lives were lost instantly. At first, it seemed like a tragic accident, but as investigators began to dig deeper, whispers of arson, sabotage, and even labor disputes surfaced. What caused this deadly explosion? And who could be cruel enough to set a trap so lethal? Stay with us as we expose the shocking truth behind one of Kansas City's most haunting mysteries. Kansas City in the late 1980s was a city filled with promise and progress. The landscape was dotted with bustling construction sites, each representing the region's growth and development. One such site sat near Highway 71 and 87th Street, where a limestone quarry was being prepared for expansion. On the surface, it appeared to be an ordinary work site. However, beneath that seemingly ordinary exterior, there was a tension that few could have foreseen, and that would soon explode into disaster. The disaster stood behind them like a hidden monster. If you're eager to dive deeper into true stories of heroism and tragedy, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more compelling narratives that bring history to life. The Kansas City Fire Department was a cornerstone of the community. Its firefighters were local heroes, ordinary men who regularly placed themselves in extraordinary situations. Captains Gerald Halloran and James Kilvinton Jr. led with integrity and calm under pressure. Firefighters Robert McCarnan, Thomas Fry, Michael Oldham, and Gene Hurd followed in their footsteps, earning the respect and admiration of their peers in the city they served. Together, these 6 men were more than colleagues. Moreover, they were like a family. The construction site by the highway became a focal point of violence in the weeks preceding the tragedy. Labor disputes between union and non-union workers had grown heated, with incidents of vandalism and sabotage reported. Equipment had been damaged, and the atmosphere was charged with hostility. For those working on the site, every day brought a new layer of unease. November 29, 1988, started like any other day for the firefighters of Kansas City. For Halloran, Kilvinton, McCarnan, Fry, Oldham, and Hurd, it was another shift, another opportunity to serve and protect. That night, a call came in, a fire at the construction site near the highway. Small fires had been reported, nothing these seasoned men hadn't handled countless times before. They arrived at the scene to find flames firing up the sides of storage trailers. These were not any ordinary trailers. They contained fuel oil and ammonium nitrate, a highly explosive mixture used to blast rock. The firefighters were entering a death trap without realizing it. The firefighters began their work, battling the flames with the precision and courage that defined their careers. But this wasn't an ordinary fire. The blaze crept closer to the volatile storage containers, and time was running out. Then, without warning, disaster struck. A massive explosion ripped through the site, creating craters in the ground and sending debris flying for miles. The blast was so strong that nearby towns could feel its effects. There was no way out for those on the scene. The 6 firefighters lost their lives in the line of duty and were instantly killed. The community woke to the unimaginable situation. Families of the fallen firefighters were shattered, their grief compounded by a haunting question. How could this happen? At first, it seemed like a tragic accident that happened just because of fate. But as the days passed, unsettling details emerged. The fires had not begun spontaneously. They had been purposefully set. What at first glance appeared to be a horrific accident was now suspected of arson. Kansas City would be rocked by this discovery, and its citizens would be left to deal with grief, rage, and their search for answers. It began as a seemingly ordinary night in Kansas City, but within hours, it spiraled into one of the deadliest tragedies in the city's history. Just after 3:30 a.m. on November 29, 1988, small fires flickered ominously at a construction site near US Highway 71. What started as a routine emergency call would soon erupt into unimaginable chaos. When firefighters from Station 41 responded to the scene, They found two fires, which were a smoldering trailer perched on a hillside and a blazing pickup truck nearby. The truck fire was quickly brought under control, and the focus shifted to the trailer, where the true danger lay hidden. Despite warnings from security guards that the site stored explosives, nothing about the situation appeared immediately life-threatening. And then exactly the disaster struck. At precisely 4:10 a.m., a thunderous explosion shattered the pre-dawn silence, sending shockwaves across Kansas City. 6 firefighters who had come to safeguard the town were killed when the flaming explosion destroyed everything in its path. The destruction became evident as the smoke and debris settled around 25,000 pounds of volatile chemicals, strong enough to create holes in the ground, which had caused the explosion. This, however, was no coincidence. Under the debris, there was proof of a planned crime with terrible intentions that would take years to discover. What do you think? If the crime was chilling, the cover-up was a masterclass in deception. The flames of suspicion ignited almost as soon as the smoke cleared. Initial theories swirled like a storm. Was it arson? A reckless prank? A sinister insurance scam? A growing labor issue at the construction site soon came to the forefront. Arson attacks and equipment destruction were among the persistent vandalism that non-union contractors had to deal with. Could these conflicts have turned into something far more deadly? As they looked further, investigators discovered a complex network of dubious alibis and competing motivations. The matter remained mysterious for years until 5 people were charged in 1995. The subject of a dramatic courtroom drama was Brian Shepard, his family, and a friend. The group had been stealing equipment from the site and starting the fires to distract attention, according to the incriminating evidence presented by the prosecution. However, when the trailer, which was accidentally loaded with explosives, caught fire, their purported plan went wrong. The tale didn't stop there, though. Claims of innocence were denied by the defense, who cited the strong reliance on witness testimony and the absence of tangible proof. Many claimed that promises of freedom or lighter punishments poisoned these statements. Under layers of contradicting stories, the truth seems to elude discovery. Questions persisted even after all 5 defendants were found guilty. Had the right people paid the price, or had justice been done? As more questions arose, a historic Supreme Court decision in 2017 resulted in one defendant, Brian Shepard, getting his sentence lowered. Even if the purpose of the cover-up was to conceal the truth, the memories of that terrible night and the lives it took still call for explanations. Was the crime perfect, or a flawed quest for justice? Investigators were searching for answers after the devastating explosion that killed 6 Kansas City firefighters on November 29, 1988, left the town in shock. The 6 courageous men, firefighters Robert McCarnan, Thomas Fry, Michael Oldham, and Gene Hurd, and Captains Gerald Halloran and Jim Kilventon, were reacting to what appeared to be routine fires at a construction site close to U.S. Highway 71. Early hypotheses included intentional sabotage during labor disputes and unintentional ignition. The city screamed as the loss echoed through neighborhoods and firehouses, but beneath the grief lay a burning question like who was responsible. Years passed with no tangible leads in the investigation, despite the tragedy's seriousness. Since a large portion of the tangible evidence had been destroyed in the explosion, the site provided little hints. Though suspicions persisted, investigators looked at several possibilities, including the potential of an unintentional fire brought on by incorrectly stored explosives. Meanwhile, rumors of foul play started to spread, casting a pall of suspicion over the neighborhood. However, in the absence of conclusive proof, the case appeared doomed to be forgotten. When government officials stepped up their efforts in the mid-1990s, a breakthrough occurred. The case was re-examined with additional zeal by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, and local law enforcement. They used sophisticated forensic procedures, re-examined the evidence, and conducted a large number of interviews. This methodical technique started to reveal nuances that had been missed before. There was an air of suspense as the detectives refocused. Would justice finally be served? An important turning point came when detectives got information on a group of people who had a criminal history in the neighborhood. They included Brian Shepard, his uncles Earl Skip and Frank Shepard, his cousin Richard Dwayne Shepard, and Larry Mike Carr, a family acquaintance. Although these people were known for committing small-time crimes, could they have committed such a terrible act? On the night of the explosion, witnesses reported seeing them close to the building site. As investigators looked into discrepancies in their alibis and actions that pointed to more than coincidence, suspicion grew. However, this was not a simple matter. Difficult witnesses and the passage of time, which can destroy recollections and tangible evidence, were among the difficulties the investigating team faced. Because they feared punishment or being implicated themselves, many witnesses were reluctant to come forward. Despite these challenges, the team continued and pieced together a story that implied the fires were intentional acts of arson meant to divert attention from stealing rather than being unintentional. Investigators hypothesized that the dangerous explosives kept in the trailers were what the criminals had not expected, transforming their heist into a devastating tragedy. As the case progressed toward prosecution, the strain increased. The 5 accused were charged with the explosion by a federal grand jury in June 1996. The town was excited by the news, which sparked optimism that justice would be done at last. From the trial that followed, turned out to be anything from simple. It was a maze of contradictory testimony and circumstantial evidence. The credibility of the witnesses who had made agreements for reduced sentences or immunity was called into question by the prosecution's heavy reliance on them. The absence of tangible proof linking the defendants to the crime site was emphasized by the defense during the trial. No DNA or fingerprints were found, and there was no obvious forensic connection between the accused and the explosion. Rather, the prosecution relied on a network of statements from people whose memories and motivations were examined in court. As the story was told, the jury listened carefully, but there was still some doubt. Was it a house of cards, or was the prosecution putting together a strong case? In 1997, the jury found all 5 guilty of aiding and abetting arson that resulted in death, notwithstanding the defense's claims. They were given life sentences without the possibility of release. The convictions gave a community that had been troubled by the deaths of 6 courageous firefighters a sense of closure. The departed were remembered for their sacrifice at memorial services. Their legacy would go on because their names were inscribed on Kansas City's hearts. To avoid similar events in the future, the case also led to modifications in safety procedures, namely about the identification and storage of dangerous items. Stricter rules were put in place at construction sites nationwide, guaranteeing that hazardous materials were properly labeled and kept in secure storage. For a while, it appeared that the tragedy had sparked significant change, but as the years went by, concerns arose regarding the trial's fairness and the investigation's integrity. The use of testimony from witnesses who had been granted amnesty or leniency was criticized for possible biases. Were these witnesses driven by self-interest or under duress? There was an awkward ambiguity in the case's result because the absence of tangible evidence tormented those who desired complete assurance. Started investigations from 2008 cast new doubt on the convicted people's guilt. The existence of other suspects and potential coercion in eliciting testimonies were among the concerning elements of the case that journalists and legal experts discovered. These disclosures fueled discussions over whether the true criminals had been apprehended and renewed public interest. Could the wrong individuals be serving life sentences for a crime they didn't commit? The suspicion led to a revolutionary breakthrough in 2017. After the Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life terms without parole for juvenile offenders were unconstitutional, Brian Shepard, one of the convicted individuals, had his life sentence re-examined. After more than 20 years in prison, Shepard, who was 17 at the time of the crime, was later released. Reactions to his release were not quite uniform. Others saw it as a reopening of old scars and unanswered questions, while others saw it as a step toward justice. In Kansas City, the tragedy's effects are still felt. In order to ensure that their sacrifice is never forgotten, annual memorials are held in honor of the slain firefighters. The risks that first responders encounter and the high price of their courage are symbolized by their names. However, the case also serves as a sobering reminder of the complexity and flaws in the legal system. It emphasizes how crucial thorough investigations, impartial trials, and the never-ending search for the truth are. The narrative of the Kansas City firefighters is still a moving part of the city's past. It displays the bravery of its public servants, as well as the never-ending pursuit of justice in the face of tragedy and surprise. The tale of that tragic night and its aftermath continues to be told as fresh information and viewpoints become available, permanently altering everyone who tries to learn the truth. In 2017, Brian Shepard's life sentence was revisited following a Supreme Court ruling that deemed mandatory life sentences without parole for juveniles unconstitutional. The ruling brought a glimmer of hope to Shepard, who had spent more than 2 decades behind bars for a crime he claimed he did not commit. At the time of the explosion in 1988, Shepard was just 17 years old, a teenager with a troubled past, but one whose involvement in such a devastating act remained a subject of heated debate. His release reignited long-dormant controversies surrounding the case, sparking a fresh wave of public and legal scrutiny. For some, Shepard's release was a chance to revisit the case and seek justice in its truest form. Advocates for his innocence pointed to inconsistencies in the evidence presented during the trial and the reliance on witness testimonies that may have been influenced by plea deals. Were the testimonies reliable, or had desperation for convictions led to compromises in integrity? Questions like these loomed large, pulling the case back into the spotlight. Meanwhile, others in the community remained resolute in their belief that the right individuals had been convicted. To them, Shepard's release was a bitter pill, reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. In Kansas City, the tragedy's effects are still very much felt. The explosion site, which is now a peaceful, unassuming neighborhood, serves as a sobering reminder of the dangers that first responders encounter daily. Residents stop by this area of contemplation to honor the 6 firefighters who died. Their sacrifice will always be remembered because of the annual memorials, which attract large crowds of friends, family, and co-workers. There is an underlying sense of unresolved pain throughout the ceremonies, despite the serious speeches and quiet times. The tributes are made more unsettling by the persistent questions about what transpired that evening. Over time, the firefighters' case has come to represent the intricacies of the legal system, as well as the courage of those who serve. At the time, Shepard and the others' conviction was celebrated as a triumph, but as the years passed, it became more difficult to overlook the case's flaws. How could such a horrifying crime be based on what some now say was only circumstantial evidence? Critics contend that the probe may have taken shortcuts because of the urgency to identify anyone at fault for the catastrophe. Was the pursuit of truth overshadowed by the need for closure, or was justice served? In recent years, efforts to re-examine the case have gained momentum. Journalists, legal experts, and advocacy groups have delved into the details, uncovering troubling questions about the original investigation. Some witnesses have come forward with new information, while others have recanted their earlier statements, citing coercion or fear. These developments have added layers of complexity to an already intricate case, leaving the community divided. Could there be other suspects, long overlooked, who played a role in the explosion? Or are the convicted individuals rightly serving their sentences? The debate rages on, with no easy answers in sight. Adding to the intrigue are the personal stories of those involved. Brian Shepard's post-release life has been marked by a mix of gratitude and determination. He has maintained his innocence, advocating for a re-examination of the evidence and pushing back against the stigma of being labeled a convicted arsonist and murderer. His journey has drawn attention from filmmakers, authors, and activists, all seeking to unravel the mystery surrounding the case. But for the families of the fallen firefighters, Shepard's release has been a painful reminder of the tragedy. For them, the convictions provided a measure of closure, and reopening the case feels like revisiting an unbearable loss. The case also highlights the broader challenges of ensuring fair trials and upholding justice. The reliance on witness testimonies, the lack of direct physical evidence, and the potential influence of external pressures all point to systemic issues that extend beyond this single case. How many other convictions might be similarly flawed, and what steps can be taken to prevent such pitfalls in the future? These questions have fueled ongoing discussions among legal scholars and policymakers, making the Kansas City firefighters case a touchstone for debates about criminal justice reform. Meanwhile, the community's divide over the case reflects a deeper struggle to reconcile the past. Some residents are steadfast in their belief that justice was served, and that revisiting the case dishonors the memory of the firefighters. Others see re-examination as an essential step toward uncovering the full truth, even if it means confronting uncomfortable realities. This tension has kept the case alive in public consciousness, ensuring that it remains a topic of conversation and debate decades after the tragedy occurred. The Kansas City firefighters case remains a poignant chapter in the city's history, reflecting both the heroism of its public servants and the enduring quest for justice and truth. It is a story of loss and resilience, of questions that refuse to be silenced, and of a community grappling with the weight of its past. As new evidence and perspectives emerge, the story continues to evolve, leaving an indelible mark on all who seek to understand it. In the end, it is not just about what happened that fateful night, but about the broader pursuit of fairness and accountability in the face of tragedy. The case's legacy serves as both a cautionary tale and a call to action, reminding us that the quest for justice is rarely straightforward and often requires the courage to confront difficult truths. In conclusion, the Kansas City firefighters case is more than just a tragic story, but it's a powerful reminder of the complexities of truth and justice. The events of November 29, 1988, changed lives forever, leaving scars that the community still carries today. 6 brave firefighters paid the ultimate price, and their memory continues to inspire those who serve and protect. Yet, the lingering questions about what truly happened that night remind us that justice is rarely simple or clear-cut. So, what can we take away from all of this? Maybe it's a renewed appreciation for the firefighters and first responders who risk their lives every day. Because at the end of the day, justice isn't just about punishment, but it's about making things right. Let's keep that in mind as we move forward, together. And that's all about it. If you like more videos like the same, please give a thumbs up. And if you like more updates, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell icon so you don't miss any videos and get notifications on time. Don't hesitate to give suggestions for our videos. See you in the next one.